I was 5 minutes late to gate 22. Not because I overslept. Not because I was careless. I was on the phone with a client, our firm's most important account, walking him through a billing discrepancy while dragging my carry-on through Terminal B with one hand. I had been up until 2 a.m. the night before finishing the revised executive summary. I hadn't eaten breakfast. I had answered 2 client emails on my fiancé's behalf before I even left the apartment. When I finally reached the gate, the door was still open. I boarded, my pulse still elevated from half jogging in heels, and made my way to seat 4A. There was already someone in it. Kira, the new intern my fiancé Adrian had been personally mentoring for the past 2 months, was sitting in my window seat. She was wearing a soft creams blouse, and folded neatly across her lap was Adrian's navy blazer, the same one he'd packed that morning while I was still on my laptop. Adrian was standing in the aisle beside her, one hand braced against the overhead bin, leaning close enough that his voice was barely above a murmur. "You'll be fine," he was saying. "Just keep your eyes forward, you won't even notice." He didn't hear me approach. Kira did. She looked up, and for a half-second ink flickered across her face, not surprise exactly. More like recalibration. "Oh, Vera," she said, "you made it." Adrian turned. His first words weren't, "Are you okay, or you were on with the client again, weren't you?" His first words were, "We were about to give up on you." I looked at my seat. I looked at his jacket. I looked at the way his hand was still resting on the headrest above her. "That's my seat," I said. He exhaled through his nose. "She gets anxious on flights. I thought you'd understand." We had not had that conversation. "I have a window seat because I need to use my laptop without glare," I said. "I booked it 6 weeks ago." "Vera." His voice, the tone he used when he thought I was embarrassing him in public. "There's an open seat in row 19. It's just a seat. Don't do this." I stood in the aisle. A flight attendant behind me cleared her throat gently. People in the surrounding rows had gone quiet in that particular way strangers do when they sense they're about to witness something. I looked at Adrian. I looked at his blazer on her lap. Then I pulled my carry-on back toward the door. "Ma'am," the flight attendant started. "I'm getting off," I said. "Vera." His voice came sharp behind me. I didn't stop. The jetway door sealed behind me with a mechanical hiss. By the time I reached the gate and sat down near the window, I realized my hands were completely steady. I had expected them to shake. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Like a room that had been slowly filling with smoke had finally been opened. I watched the plane push back from the gate. Then I opened my phone and typed to Adrian, "This isn't about the seat. We're done." I turned off our shared location. I opened my wedding coordinator's contact and typed, "Put everything on hold. I'll explain soon." She replied within 2 minutes. "Are you sure?" I looked down at the cushion-cut solitaire on my left hand, the ring I had contributed $4,000 toward, because Adrian had been a little short when he proposed. I'd thought it was sweet at the time. I took the ring off and put it in the small zip pocket inside my bag. "Yes," I replied, "I'm sure." I rebooked on the next departure. I upgraded to first class myself with my own card. By the time I landed in Chicago, I had 4 missed calls from Adrian, a text from my future mother-in-law Frances, and 1 voice message. I played it while the other passengers were still deplaning. His tone was clipped, like he was leaving a message for someone who had inconvenienced him at a staff meeting. "Vera, this is getting ridiculous. Kira sat in the seat for 40 minutes. That's all that happened. If you miss the client dinner tonight because of this, that's on you. I need you to act like a professional." I saved the voice message. Then I replied to his text, "The client is my responsibility, you're not." He didn't respond. The Meridian Group engagement had been mine for 11 months. I built the proposal from nothing. Market research, risk modeling, competitive analysis, 3 rounds of financial projections. Adrian had been added as executive sponsor 4 months in, which meant his name appeared on the title slide, and he attended the larger presentations. Kira had joined 8 weeks ago as his intern. Her job was scheduling, note-taking, and printing documents I sent her. At the hotel, Frances called. She had a voice that was always precisely calibrated. Warm when she needed something from me, brittle when I wasn't delivering it. That night, it was brittle. "The wedding coordinator called me," she said. "What on earth is going on?" "The engagement is off," I said. "I'll follow up with you about the vendor contracts." A pause, then, "You cannot be serious." "Good night, Frances." I had barely set the phone down when there was a knock at my door. I checked the peephole. Adrian, and 2 steps behind him, Kira, still in the cream blouse, her eyes red-rimmed. He knocked again. "Open the door, we need to talk." I called the front desk. This is room 614. There are people at my door I haven't invited. Could you send security up? They arrived in 4 minutes. I watched through the peephole as Adrian's expression shifted from irritated to embarrassed to something harder. He said something low to Kira. They left. I opened my laptop and worked until midnight. He sent 19 messages that night. The last one arrived at 12:51 a.m. You had better show up to the client meeting tomorrow and act normal. Don't let your personal issues affect my project. I read it. Then I created a new folder on my desktop and named it Documentation. The morning meeting was at 9. I arrived 30 minutes early, set up the conference room, and introduced myself to the Meridian CFO and his team before anyone from our firm had walked in. When Adrian arrived with Kira at 8:57, he pulled me aside in the hallway. Let Kira open the presentation, he said. She worked on it last night. She needs the opportunity. I looked at him. She's not on the project team. I'm the executive sponsor. I'm making a call. Then you take responsibility for the outcome. He frowned but said nothing more. Kira stood at the front of the room and mispronounced the client's company name on her opening slide. The CFO looked up from his notepad. Kira lost her place by slide 4. On slide 6, she read last year's revenue figures as the current year's on slide 8, an internal comment I had left for myself. Flag this number, confirm with legal before presenting, appeared on the projected screen for everyone to read. The room went very still. The CFO set down his pen. Adrian leaned toward me. Take over. I walked to the front, connected my own laptop, and spoke directly to the room. My apologies. That was an unreviewed draft. I'll present the finalized version now. I didn't explain further. 20 minutes later, the CFO's posture had shifted entirely. As the meeting closed, he shook my hand and said quietly, Vera, let's make sure you're our primary contact going forward. This is a substantial engagement. It belongs with you. On the ride back to the hotel, Adrian and I were in the same car. Kira was in another. Why didn't you step in earlier, he said. You told me not to bring personal feelings into work. He stared out the window. You knew she wasn't ready. So did you. A long silence then. This is all because of a seat. You understand how that sounds? I turned to look at him. You knew it was my assigned seat. You decided before I even arrived that I would give it up. Because you assumed I always would. You didn't ask. You never ask. You just arrange things and wait for me to accommodate them. You're being dramatic, I finished. That's the word you use when you don't have a better argument. He didn't speak again. That afternoon, I requested the full access log for the Meridian shared drive from our IT department. The administrator hesitated. That usually goes through the executive sponsor. I'm the project lead of record, I said. Generate the report. What I found was not a surprise exactly. But seeing it documented made something settle in my chest with a cold finality. Kira had accessed my files 16 times over 6 weeks. Not the shared team folder, my personal project directory, which required a separate authorization grant. She had downloaded my client persona models, my competitive analysis drafts, 2 versions of the pricing structure I hadn't released to anyone. Every access grant had been approved by Adrian. I forwarded the log to our chief operating officer with one line, unauthorized access to confidential project materials, requesting formal compliance review. She called me 20 minutes later. This will involve Adrian. I know, I said. That evening, Kira appeared at my hotel room door alone. I didn't open it. I turned on my voice recorder and held my phone close. I just want to explain, she said through the door. Her voice was different than it was in meetings, less uncertain, more deliberate. Adrian told me you'd probably take a step back after the wedding, that you'd want to focus on starting a family. He said the Meridian account would be restructured anyway, and that I should start building relationships with the client team now. A pause. He said you wouldn't even mind. I kept recording. Her voice shifted, softer, almost gentle. Vera, he's with you out of 6 years of habit. He needs someone who doesn't wear him out. You should let this go before you embarrass yourself further. I clicked save. Then, through the closed door, every word you just said is now on record. Good night, Kira. The compliance meeting was held 2 days later. Adrian, Kira, Arco, and me. Kira cried. She apologized. She said she hadn't fully understood the data policy. You signed the acknowledgement form your first week, the CO said. Adrian told me it was fine, Kira said, her voice cracking. And then, when she realized that wasn't going to be enough, he also said Vera was difficult to work with, that she was burning out and would probably request a transfer after the wedding. He told me to get familiar with her accounts because they'd need a new lead. Adrian went very still. I opened my laptop and projected a chat log onto the conference room screen. 3 weeks earlier, Adrian had messaged Kira. Start getting comfortable with the Meridian team dynamics. I'll handle the introductions. Once Vera and I get married, she's going to want to slow down. She just hasn't admitted it yet. Better to have someone ready. The room was silent. I was venting, Adrian said. You were planning, I said. Kira's internship was terminated that afternoon. Adrian was removed as executive sponsor of Meridian, pending formal review. Frances organized a family dinner that Friday. She framed it as a conversation, but she had invited Adrian's aunt, 2 cousins, and a family friend, the kind of gathering designed to make one woman feel numerically overwhelmed. I arrived on time. I chose a chair near the door. His aunt spoke first. Vera, 6 years is 6 years. You can't throw that away over something that happened on a plane. He had planned before I boarded that I would give up my seat, I said. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a decision he made without asking me. You're being too hard on him, Frances said. He's under enormous pressure. He needs support, not ultimatums. I gave him 6 years of support, I said. I worked on his proposals. I managed his client relationships when he was traveling. I lent his mother $22,000 over 2 years, which she has not repaid. The table went quiet. Adrian's aunt looked at Frances. Frances's composure fractured slightly. That was a private arrangement. Every request is in writing, I said, with dates and amounts. My attorney has the records. I took a folder from my bag and set it on the table. The down payment on our apartment. I contributed $130,000 of the $200,000 total. The renovation costs. I paid $55,000 of the $85,000. The wedding deposits are almost entirely from my credit card. All of it is documented. All of it is covered by the financial agreement we signed 18 months ago. Frances stared at the folder. She had signed that agreement herself, quickly, without reading it carefully, because she'd wanted the renovation to begin, and I had made it a condition. She had probably assumed my feelings for Adrian meant I would never actually enforce it. I took out my phone and pressed play. Kira's voice filled the room. He's with you out of 6 years of habit. He needs someone who doesn't wear him out. Kira, sitting across the table, went the color of paper. I stopped the recording. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here because everyone in this room told me to be realistic, so I want to make sure we're all operating from the same set of facts. I stood up and picked up my bag. My attorney will be in touch. Adrian has 45 days under the signed agreement. Frances, same timeline on the loan repayment. I walked out. Adrian caught up with me in the parking lot. Vera. His voice had none of its usual management. It was just a voice tired. Please look at me. I stopped. I know I handled things badly, he said. All of it, the plane, the project, I know. He exhaled, but 6 years. Are you really going to end 6 years? You had already started ending it, I said. You were quietly moving me off my own work. You were telling Kira I'd step back so she could step forward. You weren't waiting to see if I'd leave on my own. You were arranging a replacement. His jaw tightened. The seat was just the first time you did it where I could see it, I said. He was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry. I looked at him. I believe he meant it. I also know that meaning something and earning something back are entirely different. I've received your apology, I said. I hope you do better. I got in my car. The financial settlement was finalized 6 weeks later. Adrian sold some investments and refinanced the apartment to cover the principal. Frances's loan repayment arrived with a 3-paragraph text about my character that I read once, then blocked. The wedding deposits were unwound by my coordinator with minimal penalty, because every contract had been in my name, and the termination clauses were ones I had personally reviewed before signing. The Meridian engagement continued. The CFO added a second phase to the contract in January. At the company's quarterly all-hands, my COO publicly credited me with saving the partnership. I stood up, said thank you, and sat back down. In March, I was at O'Hare again. This time I was early. I bought a coffee, cleared security without rushing, and boarded first when my zone was called. My seat was 3F. Window, first class, no one else's coat on the armrest. I stowed my bag, opened my laptop, and watched Chicago fall away beneath me as the plane climbed through the clouds. A message came in from my coordinator. Third positive client review this quarter. Meridian specifically requested you lead the Phase 2 kickoff. I looked out the window. I used to believe that loving someone meant filling every gap without being asked, smoothing over every rough edge, making yourself smaller so the two of you could fit more comfortably into the shape he preferred. I thought that was generosity. I understand now it was something else. A slow erosion I had mistaken for devotion. I took a sip of my coffee and let the city disappear behind the clouds. My seat, my work, my name on the contract. That was more than enough.